And so she says, Torah observance is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, this is the question that I want to ask. Is that true? Now, certainly, I think everyone here, especially in the chat room, people who listen to this show a lot, know that both Rob and I are very, very solid on justification by faith alone. You're not justified by faith. Or I'm sorry, you're not by faith. Sorry, Freudian slip there. You're not justified by works, right? We are not justified by anything that we do. I can't gain God's favor so that he'll like me enough to save me. That's not how it works. In fact, Rob and I go even further. We believe in the doctrines of grace. We believe that God chooses.
And
the
it
elect.
never was that way. It never was that way.
Absolutely. So for those who might be questioning before we start off on this little tangent, because here's the thing, I think it's important to ask this question because I think that there might be a little bit of misperception here, even in my own mind. Here's the thing. Let's go to what the Bible actually says. Paul himself in Galatians 3 says that the gospel was preached beforehand to Abraham when it was stated, in your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed. So that's the gospel message, according to Paul. According to Paul, the gospel message is, in your seed, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Now, granted, that's stated 5 times in Genesis, right? That's stated 5 times to Abraham. However,
and elsewhere in the Psalms, and it's reiterated.
Absolutely. Right. But with that said, one of the times that he says, in your seed, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, what happens? There's a covenant attached to it. The Abrahamic covenant is attached to that promise.
Yeah, it's so attached that they're inseparable. It would be, if you're reading Scripture carefully and attentively, you won't separate. You'll understand that these are absolutely fused together. They're inseparable.
So here's the thing. What is promised to Abraham in the Abrahamic covenant? It's a land grant treaty. He's promised the land in perpetuity throughout generations, right? It's dynastic. And so the point is that the land is promised to Abraham. Now, when Israel gets to the land, what is set forward? The Mosaic Law, and the Mosaic Law is in tandem. It's in tandem with the Abrahamic promise. And the Abrahamic...
And it clarifies blessing from cursing, blessing from the curses.
Exactly. If you do this, then
the Torah helps the faithful to learn more about who God is, to learn about his holiness, his righteousness, his justice, his forgiveness, his kindness, his long-suffering.
So here's the thing that I would say about Nicole. I think what she's trying to say, now, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I believe what she's trying to say is the gospel is that God saves us apart from our own works. Now I agree with that. However, I think that the gospel message
that's a given in the Torah. Genesis 12, God says, "Get up and go." Right? There's no scenario where Abraham was not going to obey. He was given faith to persevere.
Right.
And Moses, right? By faith, it says in Hebrews 11, Moses kept the Passover, delivered Egypt. It wasn't that God, there were a lot of, how Yeshua says, there were many widows in the time of Elijah. There were many lepers in the time of Elisha, and only Naaman the Syrian was. There were many slaves in the world, many enslaved peoples in this mid-second millennium BC, whenever that was. But God chose one because of a covenant. It wasn't based on works. So that
absolutely
the gift of the Torah at Sinai was given to a redeemed people who had not. It wasn't based on works. It's based on him being true to his covenant promise.
It was based on God's choosing. One of the big problems that people have is Isaac. Because Abraham says, I want to give the covenant to Ishmael. Let me give the covenant to Ishmael. This is before Isaac is even born. And what does God say? No, absolutely not. There's going to be
before
another
he's
child.
Conceived even.
Right. There's going to be another child. He carries the covenant, not Ishmael.
And his seed after him.
So
that means God looks way into the future.
Okay. This this all it comes back to, I appreciate covenant theology for several things. Now, I dislike covenant theology for several things as well, namely the fact that covenant theology tries to do away with the Torah, right? But covenant theology admits that the way of salvation has always been God's grace and that the covenants are intertwined. Now,
it would be like if a tree had a movable arm, you give it a saw and it starts cutting itself down. It doesn't make sense.
But you can't take. I am fully convinced you can't take away any of the covenants. You take away the Abrahamic covenant, we have major problems. You take away the Mosaic covenant, major problems. Davidic covenant, major problems. Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell us your thoughts on this subject by leaving a comment in the comment section. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and enable those notifications. And we'll see you in the next video.